We called the venue and canceled everything, Mom announced triumphantly as she walked into my apartment unannounced, Dad trailing behind her with that self-satisfied expression he wore whenever he believed he'd solved a problem. That man isn't right for you, Cassandra, and deep down you know it. We're saving you from the biggest mistake of your life. Dad added smugly, the deposit's non-refundable, so we saved you money too, you can thank us later. But why was my phone buzzing with a call from my venue manager, and why did the message preview read, Miss Thornton, someone claiming to be your mother just attempted to cancel your event. At your own property. Should I contact security? I held up one finger to silence my parents and answered the call. Rebecca, thank you for alerting me. No, don't contact security. But please document everything that was said and who said it. I paused. Also, increase staffing for the wedding by 20%. We're going to have a few unexpected guests who might try to cause problems. I hung up and turned to face my parents, who were exchanging confused glances. What was that about? Mom demanded. Who's Rebecca? Rebecca is my venue manager. At Thornwood Estate. The venue you just tried to cancel. I smiled, a cold expression I'd learned from years of dealing with difficult investors. The property I've owned for 3 years. You just attempted to cancel my wedding at my own estate. The color drained from both their faces. I'd been the family disappointment for as long as I could remember. Not because I'd failed at anything, quite the opposite. The Thornton family measured success by a very specific metric: prestige over prosperity, appearance over achievement. My older sister Helena had married a senator's son. My brother Marcus worked at Dad's law firm. They'd both followed the path our parents had laid out: right schools, right connections, right marriages. I'd gone a different direction. Instead of law school, I'd studied hospitality management and real estate. Instead of marrying into an established family, I'd built my own wealth from scratch. By 26, I'd flipped my first property. By 30, I owned 4 boutique hotels. By 33, I'd acquired Thornwood Estate, a historic 200-acre property that I'd transformed into one of the most sought-after wedding venues on the East Coast. My parents had no idea. It wasn't that I'd hidden my success deliberately, I'd simply stopped sharing my life with people who only criticized it. When I'd mentioned my first hotel acquisition, Mom had asked when I was going to get a real job. When I'd tried to show Dad the magazine feature about my second property, he'd changed the subject to Marcus's latest case. After a while, I stopped trying. They assumed I was struggling. I let them assume. The truth was that my struggling had built a $40 million portfolio while my siblings were still paying off student loans and living in houses our parents had helped finance. But that truth didn't fit the narrative they'd constructed, so they simply ignored any evidence that contradicted it. Then I met Jonathan, and everything changed. Jonathan Rivera was a high school teacher from Queens. Not a lawyer. Not a banker. Not the son of anyone important. Just a man who taught AP history, coached the debate team, and volunteered at a literacy nonprofit on weekends. He drove a 10-year-old Civic, lived in a modest apartment, and had never owned a suit that cost more than $200. He was also the kindest, funniest, most genuine person I'd ever met. We'd connected at a charity gala, one of the few I attended each year. He'd been there representing the literacy nonprofit, looking uncomfortable in a borrowed tuxedo, and I'd been escaping a tedious conversation with a real estate developer who couldn't take a hint. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else, I'd said, joining him by the bar. Is it that obvious? He'd laughed, loosening his tie. I'm here to shake hands and ask for money, but I'm terrible at it. I keep wanting to actually talk to people instead of network with them. What would you talk about? Right now? Probably how surreal it is that people are drinking champagne that costs more than my monthly grocery budget while standing next to ice sculptures shaped like swans, he'd grinned. I'm Jonathan, by the way. I teach history, which is why I'm noticing that these swan ice sculptures are anatomically incorrect. I'd laughed, really laughed, for the first time at one of these events in years. I'm Cassandra. And I'd love to hear more about historically accurate swan anatomy. We'd talked for 3 hours that night. Then he'd asked for my number, not for networking purposes, just because he wanted to see me again. When I told him I worked in real estate, he'd asked if I enjoyed it. Not how much money I made. Not what properties I owned. Just whether I was happy. I'd fallen in love with him before our second date. Introducing Jonathan to my family was a mistake I'd made out of misguided optimism. A teacher? Mom had repeated, as if I'd said he was a carnival worker. From Queens? He's brilliant, Mom. He has a master's in education and he's completely dedicated to his students, but what does he bring to the table? What connections does he have? What family? He brings kindness. Integrity. He makes me laugh every single day. Cassandra, be practical. You're not getting any younger. If you insist on marrying beneath your station, at least choose someone who can support you. I can support myself. Doing what? Flipping those little houses? She'd waved dismissively. Sweetie, that's not a career. That's a hobby that hasn't failed yet. I'd ended the lunch early and hadn't spoken to her in 3 months. When Jonathan proposed, at a tiny Italian restaurant in Queens, with a ring he'd saved for a year to afford, I said yes without hesitation. I didn't tell my family for 2 weeks, and when I finally did, their response was predictably terrible. You're making a mistake, Dad said. This man has nothing to offer you. He offers me everything that matters. You're being naive. When the romance fades and you're stuck with someone who can't provide, I don't need him to provide, Dad. I provide for myself. Very successfully, actually. Right. His tone made clear how much he believed me. Well, when this falls apart, don't come running to us. I wouldn't dream of it. Thornwood Estate was my masterpiece. I'd acquired it 5 years ago, a deteriorating historic property that had been in foreclosure for a decade. The main house dated to 1890, with original woodwork, stained glass windows, and gardens that had once been featured in architectural magazines. It had taken me 3 years and $8 million to restore it to its former glory. Now it hosted 40 weddings a year at an average price of $150,000 each. The waiting list was 18 months long. Brides flew in from Europe and Asia just to get married in the Rose Garden or the restored ballroom. When Jonathan and I started planning our wedding, there was never any question about the venue. Are you sure? He'd asked when I suggested it. I don't want our wedding to feel like a work event. It's not just a work property, Jonathan. It's the thing I'm most proud of building. I want to share that with you. I want to get married in the place I created. Then that's exactly what we'll do. We planned everything ourselves, no wedding planner, no family input, no expectations but our own. We chose a late September date when the gardens would be at their peak. We invited 200 guests, mostly friends, a few business contacts, and my siblings only because cutting them out entirely seemed more trouble than it was worth. My parents received an invitation. I didn't expect them to attend. I certainly didn't expect them to try to cancel the entire event. What do you mean, your own estate? Dad demanded. That venue costs $200,000, we checked. You couldn't possibly afford, I couldn't afford to rent it, no. That's why I bought it. 5 years ago. Along with the 4 hotels I own and the development company I run. I crossed my arms. Did you ever once ask about my actual career? Or did you just assume I was failing because that's what you wanted to believe? Mom's face had gone from pale to red. This is ridiculous. You're lying. You're a house flipper. You've always been. I was a house flipper, Mom. Then I became a developer. Then a hotelier. Then an investor. My portfolio is worth $40 million. I've been featured in Forbes, Hotel Management Magazine, and Architectural Digest. I pulled out my phone and showed them the articles. But you wouldn't know that, because you've never once asked about my life without immediately dismissing whatever I told you. Dad grabbed the phone, scrolling through with increasingly frantic movements. This can't be right. Marcus would have told us. Marcus doesn't know either. Because I stopped sharing my successes with people who only wanted to see me fail. The silence stretched. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Why didn't you tell us? I tried. For years, I tried. Every time I mentioned an accomplishment, you changed the subject to Helena's charity board or Marcus's cases. Every time I talked about my work, you called it a hobby. Eventually, I realized you didn't want to know. You'd already decided who I was, and nothing I did would change that. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly. You just tried to cancel my wedding because you decided my fiancé wasn't good enough. You didn't ask about his character, his values, whether he makes me happy. You just saw a teacher from Queens and concluded he was beneath me. Just like you concluded I was beneath my siblings because I didn't follow your predetermined path. Dad set down the phone. His expression had shifted from defensive to something I couldn't quite read. Cassandra, we were trying to protect you. From what? From happiness? From a man who loves me exactly as I am? From a life that I built with my own hands, without any help from either of you? From making a mistake? The only mistake would be listening to you. I walked to the door and opened it. Leave. Now. And consider carefully whether you want to attend a wedding you just tried to sabotage, because if you show up and cause any problems, security will escort you out. My security. At my property. They left without another word. Jonathan found me crying on the couch an hour later. Hey. He wrapped his arms around me. What happened? Rebecca said something about your parents trying to cancel. I told him everything. The attempted cancellation. The confrontation. The years of dismissal that had finally exploded into the open. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry, he said finally. I'm sorry they've treated you that way. I'm sorry they can't see how incredible you are. They see what they want to see. Then they're missing out. Because the woman I'm marrying is brilliant and kind and has built something amazing from nothing. And I'd be proud of you if you owned 50 properties or 0. You know that, right? I know. I leaned into him. That's why I'm marrying you. Should we uninvite them? To the wedding? I thought about it. Really considered it. No. I want them there. Not because I need their approval, but because I want them to see everything I've accomplished. The man I've chosen. The life I've built. I want them to sit in my gardens and dance in my ballroom and understand, finally, exactly how wrong they were about me. Jonathan smiled. That sounds healthy and not at all like revenge. Maybe a little like revenge. I support revenge. Especially when it comes with excellent catering. The wedding was 3 weeks later. My parents came, subdued, uncertain, clearly unsure of their welcome. I'd had Rebecca seat them at a table near the back, with distant cousins and business acquaintances. They didn't protest. The ceremony was held in the rose garden as the sun began to set. Jonathan cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. I cried when I saw him crying. Our friend Marcus, not my brother, another Marcus, thankfully, officiated with a speech about finding your person in unexpected places. Love doesn't care about your plans, he said. It shows up when it wants to, often disguised as someone your spreadsheet said was all wrong. Cassandra and Jonathan found each other at a party neither of them wanted to attend, bonded over ice sculpture anatomy, and built something real in a world obsessed with appearances. I caught my mother wiping her eyes during that part. I didn't know what to do with that. The reception was in the restored ballroom, the same room where I'd once stood knee-deep in debris, imagining what it could become. Now it glowed with candlelight and laughter, filled with people who'd supported us, believed in us, chosen to celebrate with us. During the toasts, my sister Helena stood up unexpectedly. I know I'm not on the official list, she said, but I hope Cassandra will let me say something. I nodded, wary but willing. Growing up, I thought I was the successful one. The one who did everything right. But looking around this room, at this incredible property, at the man my sister chose. Helena's voice wavered. I realize I had it backwards. Cassandra didn't fail at following our family's path. She succeeded at creating her own. And I'm ashamed it took me this long to see it. She raised her glass. To Cassandra and Jonathan. May your marriage be as strong as the woman who built this place from ruins. The room applauded. I found myself crying again. My parents approached during the dancing. Dad spoke first, his voice halting. Cassandra, what Helena said, she was right. We were wrong. About everything. Yes. You were. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know we haven't earned that. But I want you to know that I see it now. What you've built. Who you've become. He looked around the ballroom, at the intricate restoration work, the period-appropriate fixtures, the seamless blend of history and modernity. This is extraordinary. Thank you. And Jonathan? Dad turned to my husband, who had materialized at my side with champagne. I misjudged you. I saw your job title and your address and assumed I knew who you were. That was wrong. Any man who makes my daughter this happy is exactly who she should have married. Jonathan accepted the handshake Dad offered. Thank you, sir. I know this has been a difficult day for you. Less difficult than we deserve. Mom stepped forward, tears streaking her makeup. Cassandra, I'm so sorry. For the venue thing, for the years of not seeing you. I was so focused on the life I thought you should want that I never asked what you actually wanted. No. You didn't. Can we try again? Start over? I looked at this woman who had dismissed me for 33 years. Who had tried to sabotage my wedding 3 weeks ago, who was now asking for a fresh start she hadn't earned. We can try, I said carefully. But starting over doesn't mean forgetting. It means rebuilding. Slowly. With proof, not just promises. That's more than fair. And if you ever try to interfere in my life again, that's it. No more chances. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Jonathan squeezed my hand. I think the DJ's about to play our song. I let him lead me to the dance floor, leaving my parents standing at the edge of the ballroom watching their daughter spin through a room she built with her own hands in the arms of a man they called unworthy. The article in Wedding magazine ran 3 months later. Thornwood estate owner weds in her own ballroom, the headline read. The photos were gorgeous, the gardens in autumn colors, the candlelit reception, Jonathan and me laughing in the rose garden. The journalist had asked about the venue's history, and I'd told her the restoration story. What I hadn't told her was the family drama that had nearly overshadowed the day. Some stories are for magazines. Some are just for me. But the ending was the same either way. I'd built something beautiful. I'd married someone wonderful. And I'd done it all without anyone's help, permission, or approval. My parents are trying, genuinely trying, to rebuild our relationship. We have monthly dinners now. They ask about the business. They've even visited 2 of my hotels, walking through the lobbies with expressions of wonder I'd never seen before. We had no idea, Mom keeps saying. We had absolutely no idea. I know, I always reply. That was the problem. But we're working on it. Slowly. Carefully. With proof, not just promises. And every September, when another bride walks down the aisle in my rose garden, I remember my own wedding. The confrontation before. The celebration after. The moment when everything I built finally became visible to the people who refused to see it. I didn't need their validation. I never had. But there was something satisfying about receiving it anyway, on my terms, in my space, surrounded by evidence they couldn't dismiss or ignore. Some victories are quiet. Some are very, very loud. Mine was both. They tried to cancel my wedding because they thought they knew better. They didn't know the venue was mine. They didn't know anything about my life because they'd never cared enough to ask. But now they know. Now they see. Not because I needed them to, I stopped needing that years ago. But because seeing is believing, and belief is the first step toward change. They're changing. Slowly. And I'm building still, properties, partnerships, a marriage, a future. All of it mine. All of it exactly what I wanted.